more geared to the things that we want to do and to be people pleasers. The service that we do, some people call it the lip service or the eye service. You do those things because maybe someone is watching you. And when they leave that place, they're not watching you, then you begin to curse, you begin to blame God. You begin to curse, you begin to speak things that are not right in your heart. So as you're serving God, as you're doing whatever you're doing, how is your heart? The same question that I ask myself. Even as I do Kingdom Conversation where I have people watching from all over, what is the state of my heart? Why is it that I'm doing Kingdom Conversations and Kingdom Girls, of course? Why is it that you do the things that you do? What drives you? What pushes you to do the things that you do? What pushes you to give the offerings that you give? What pushes you to do the things that you do? Because it's very important for you to do whatever you do from a perfect heart, from a clean heart, a perfect heart towards God. Because that is what God seeks after. That's what God is looking. When God begins to look at your service, He's not just looking at what your mouth is speaking. He's not looking at what you're able to say. He's looking at the state of your heart, the posture of your heart. As you're doing whatever you're doing, what is the posture of your heart? And this has taught me a lot of times that it is what I do. It is not what I do that matters, but the posture of my heart. It is not what you do for God, but the posture of your heart. What is the state of your heart when you're doing whatever you're doing? I've seen a lot of people give up in some of the service for God. They've given up doing some things that they used to do just because nobody's watching, just because they've not been appreciated. Meaning that even from the word go, when you are doing that thing that you are doing, you're not doing it from a perfect heart. Because a perfect heart will do whatever they're supposed to do, whether anyone is watching or not. Because the one thing that you know is that whether people are watching or not, God is watching. So a perfect heart does not wait for people to applaud them. They do whatever they need to do because they know it is unto the Lord. And they know that their connectivity with God is what matters. They know that the motive towards why they do whatever they do is what matters. The attitude towards God as I'm serving Him. The attitude towards the things of God as I'm serving Him, as I'm worshiping Him, as I'm praying and fasting. What is the motive? Because that is what matters. It's not really what we do. It's not really how we do it or with who we do with, And so I've seen a lot of people that have served God, people that have served God, and they've served God's people as well. People who, like me, love doing charity work. You go out there, you bless people. You go out there, you do great things for God. But now, what is the reason for you to do all that? These are some of the questions that I ask myself when I'm going out, maybe for a charity work or anything that I'm doing. Why is it that I'm doing what I'm doing? Why am I pushing this agenda? What is behind what is my heart as I do whatever I do? Because I have seen a lot of people who have been so busy doing a lot of things, but there's very little impact of God, or very little they've received very little from the energy that they've put into a lot of things. So when you compare the energy or how busy you've been serving and the results that you have gotten, because our God is a faithful God, then you realize there's something that is not right. And that is the perfection of your heart. It's the state of your heart. Praise the name of the Lord. And so it's very important for us to come to that place where we know that the state of our heart is what matters. The state of our hearts is what matters. The drive from within, that reason. Because no matter how much we try to sugarcoat all these things, we know who we are. We can't lie about ourselves. Every time I'm doing anything, there's always a reason to why I'm doing it. And if that reason has nothing to do with God, then I should not expect anything from God. All right? And that's why you realize we have given so much. We have done a lot of things. We have thought that we are impacting lives. But when you see the impact, or rather the things that we've done, compared with the energy, with the time, with the effort that we've put into it, it doesn't match up. And the reason is the state of our hearts. You know, there are people who say, I pray so much, yet I receive nothing. Others say that I give so much, yet I've received nothing. But what was the state of your heart when you were praying? You were praying because you wanted fame. You were praying because this and that is what you wanted. Your heart was not given to God wholly, completely. That was not the reason why you were doing what you were doing. And that's why very little has happened in your life. And so it's very easy for one to come to a place where you're serious, you're busy in the vineyard, you're busy doing the things that you're doing, just like the elder son of the prodigal son, the elder brother. He was busy serving his father, working for him, you know. But there was not that relationship with their father. And that's why the Bible records as he comes back home and he hears people celebrating, a lot of celebration in his home. He's asking a servant, what's happening? You know, meaning that he never had a relationship with God. He never had a relationship with his father, or rather. There was no relationship. And so most of the times we are busy serving him out there. We are busy working for him. We are busy putting things together for God. Or maybe putting things together for our pastors. But the state of our hearts, the posture of our hearts is not right. And so today I've come to just to encourage ourselves. Before you do whatever you do, check your heart. Check your heart. How is it? Because if your heart is right, no matter what happens, you will still continue doing it. But the reason why we have people, even ministers, who arise for a season and they are no longer there is because of the state of the heart. Because when your heart is not right, even the enemy will have reasons to come and fight, not just fight, but he will actually defeat you because of the state of your heart. So service to God is first and foremost a matter of the heart. Service to God is first and foremost a matter of the heart. When your thoughts and your intentions, when your motive is right, then that is when your service to God becomes acceptable. When your motive is right, when your heart is right, when your attitude is right, you know, when your thoughts, when your intention, when your intentions and your thoughts are right towards whatever it is that you're doing, then only then does your service become acceptable before the Lord. So we need to come to this place where we stop offering to God lips kind of service, you know, where we give the eye kind of service, where people are watching, then that's when you're good. I don't know whether you've been around people who are very vibrant, are very, very energetic when you're around, when maybe the leader is around, but when you leave the place, they become people very different, because their service is what we call the eye service. Someone has to be watching, you know, someone has to applaud me, someone has to appreciate me, someone has to see. So long as none is seeing, then I don't have to push myself. I don't want to do much. I don't have to do much. So if I am to give myself completely, then someone has to see. If I am to sing and sing well, if I am to be part of this team, if I have to do this and that, then someone has to see. Someone has to see. If that is the position, or rather if that is the posture of your heart, trust me, your service will never be accepted. And every time you always be murmuring, you always be complaining that God is not hearing you. God is not responding to your prayer. God is not responding to your commitment, to your service. God is not seeing the things that I do. Or maybe your pastors, they are not seeing, because the posture of your heart is wrong. So you come to that place where your energy is because of God. Your energy, your strength to do things, what motivates you. That's basically what I'm talking about. The reason why you do the things that you do has to be perfect, has to be right. Because if then it's not, then trust me, your sacrifices, your commitment, your service will not be accepted. And so whether people are watching you or they are not watching you, so long as you keep a perfect heart, then whatever else you do, you always do it with the strength that you began with. It will not be something that you do for some years, then when you realize I've been doing this and nobody's appreciating me, then you give up. Because some of us are serving very well. Even in our churches, there are people who serve very well just because the pastor is watching, or maybe because the one in charge is appreciating. They are able to say, oh, thank you, you did this. But if no one is watching, if your pastor never appreciates you for the things that you do in church, will you still do them? If none comes to see the work that you do, or if none mentions about your vocal arrangements and how you're good in your singing, will you still continue singing? If none sees about your giving, nobody appreciates you or speaks a word of blessing to you, will you still continue giving? Because that is where we are supposed to come to, where you don't do things because people appreciate you. It's very important for you to have people around you who appreciate you. But even if they don't, it has to be to the Lord and to the Lord. And so, just like Amaziah, you might be doing things that are right, but because our hearts are not pure, because our hearts are not right, it may not count. It may not count. Just like Amaziah, you can be doing the right things. You know how to do things. You are the best in your team. You are actually the best. Your utterance is okay. Everything you do is right. But then because your heart is not perfect, then you realize whatever you do will never count. And the people of the Spirit will one time just come, and everything that you've been doing from imperfect heart will all crumble. And from that time is when you begin to feel like people are so unfair. It should not be like this. They should appreciate me. They should see what I'm doing. And every time you find yourself making such statements, check your heart. Check your heart. Because if I was to do things for people to see what I'm doing, then I would have stopped many years ago. Some of us, we've done things to people who turn back against us, turn their backs against us. Some of us have done things to people who have never even appreciated. They don't even see. They will never even mention if there's anything like that we ever did to them. But because the drive is what matters, we continue to do it. We continue to do it. And so this is where we need to come to, where we do things from a perfect heart, from a clean heart. It's because anything that you do from imperfect heart will not count as a quality service, even before God. It can't count as a quality service because God seeks the heart. God sees the heart. And one of the things that puzzles me most is to know that I can hide from everyone else. I can hide the state of my heart from everyone else, but I can't hide the state of my heart from God. People can say all manner of things, but God is the one that knows. He searches the heart. He knows your heart. And so that is where a perfect heart is very crucial. We are living in a time where every organ of the body can be scanned, except the thoughts of the heart, except the imaginations, the thoughts of the heart. There's no machine that can be able to scan what is in your heart. And that's why God searches the heart, because he knows. He is the only one who can know what has been kept in that heart. It's only God that knows what has been kept in your heart. Sometimes we do things to people, but deep within our hearts we are complaining, we are murmuring. God has a way of bringing that around. Every time you do anything from a heart that is not right, then don't expect anything to count. But all said and done, a perfect heart is not something that we can do with our own power. We need to bring our hearts to the presence of God. We need to bring our hearts to the place of his presence for a washing and perfecting. You cannot bring yourself to a place of perfection. You cannot perfect your heart as a person. There is nobody that has the capacity to work out things that will perfect their hearts. Only God can perfect a person. And that's why now your relationship with God is very crucial, very crucial. How do you relate with him? Because now the more you continue relating with God, the more he continues to perfect your heart. But one of the things that has been missing, especially in our generation, is time alone with God. We don't spend time with God. And that's why it's very hard for us to keep perfect hearts, because he's the one who can perfect us. The more we appear before him, the more we are changed into his likeness. And so the more you appear before God in the closet, your moments of prayer, your moments of interacting with God, the more you become more like him. And so the more you become like him, the more you begin to have that perfect heart, because God is perfect and everything that comes from him is perfect. So the only way we can come to this place of a perfect heart is through washing in his presence, tarrying in his presence, remaining there, allowing your heart to be there. One of the things that have taught my heart over the years is that every time I find myself in a situation that is a bit tricky for me to understand, or it's confusing, I take time to pray. I take time to be with God. I spend most of the time in his presence, because sometimes you might be wrong, other times you might be right. But every time you spend time with God, he perfects you. He perfects everything. He begins to bring everything into He reveals everything to you. And so spending time with God is very important. So a perfect heart seeks the face of God before taking any step. When you come to this place of desiring to have a perfect heart, one of the things that will begin to happen in your life is that you will seek the face of God. You will seek the will of God in your life before doing anything, before taking any step, before taking any measure in your life. The first thing that you will do is you seek the face of God. You get to know what God has to say concerning that matter. So a perfect heart is driven towards the will of God. It's always concerned about what has God to say concerning this matter. Is not what we have to say, but imperfect heart seeks its own will. You're always desiring your will to be. You don't want to come to that place where you allow the will of God to take place in your life, because sometimes the will of God is not what we are always desiring. It's not what we are always looking forward to. Sometimes God will push us to his will, which is totally against what we were thinking in that season, because he's the only wise God. He's the only wise God. And so when you come to that place of a perfect heart, then you get to that place where you begin to ask God to seek his will before anything else. And you realize from the beginning you begin to push things according to God's will. When you read about the story you've read about Amaziah, you come to realize that he knew the will of God. He knew the law of God very well. He followed the law very well. But somewhere down the line, because he never had a perfect heart, he started to drift away. He started to drift away. Why? Because of the state of his heart. Most of the times we begin well, we begin in the spirit. I've heard several people say, oh, that man of God started so well, that woman of God started so well. When you look at his early years of ministry, it was very good. But now the problem is, he started well. He did everything rightly, but he never had a perfect heart. That's where the problem is. We have people and ministers who are beginning ministries from imperfect hearts. Their drive is wrong. Why is it that I'm beginning that church? Why is it that I'm beginning that program? What drives me to begin that program? Is it because I've seen someone begin theirs and I want to enter into competition with them? Or maybe every pastor's wife now has a forum, so I have to begin mine. The motive behind the things that we do matters a lot. And that's why you realize we begin things that have no stamina. They have no posterity. They can't last for a while. But when you allow your heart to be perfect, then it begins to lead you. It begins to lead you into things that have posterity. It begins things in your life that will speak even years after you. And so it's very important for us to come to that place where we keep perfect hearts. Because slowly, if your heart is not perfect, you begin to drift away from the Lord. You begin to leave some of the things that you knew from the word God were very crucial in your walk with God. You begin to see them as minor. You know, you used to wake up at 3 a.m. to pray. But as you move on, if your heart is not perfect, what will happen is that years later you realize that waking up at 3 is like torture. You're torturing yourself. Why can't you just stay and pray whatever time? So there are some values, some things that you held so close to you when you began the journey. But if you don't keep a perfect heart, you begin to drift away from them. And sometimes you drift away like you're not drifting away. You'll never get to know that you've actually left that place. You will not know that easily, you know. And so it's very crucial for us to work hard to remain. You know, I said it's not something that you can work it out as a person, but that relationship between you and God is very important because it builds you. It continues to perfect you on a daily basis. Because what happened is that even though Amaziah began well, he started knowing the law. He started following what the Lord wanted for him to do. But he never finished well. Because when you go read the entire chapter and see what happened. Read the entire story. At the end of it, or after God gave him victory, he turned to other gods. He turned to idols. Why? Because of the state of his heart. And so it's very important for you to know that right now it might be well, but so long as your heart is not perfect, there's danger ahead. There's something awaiting you. I wouldn't want to be someone who is known for a year, you know, and after a few years, nobody talks about me because of my heart. I pray that I will posterity. I will stay. I will be consistent. And that consistency comes by keeping a perfect heart. And that perfect heart comes from a personal walk with God, a personal relationship with God. An imperfect heart starts off well, but sooner or later, it drifts away from the Lord. So it's very important for you to know that if you have imperfect heart, if you check your heart and you realize that things that are not sitting well, then begin to ask the Lord to help you. Begin to build your relationship with God. Because as I said, we are living in a world where we can get to know how your lungs are working, how your kidneys are working, but it's hard to know the thoughts of your heart. And that is what matters. What is it that you've kept in your heart? Concerning every matter, what is it that is in your heart? Because that is also what will determine what you receive from God. Because God will respond to your heart, not to your words. You can speak a lot of things to God, but God sees where those words are coming. Is it from a pure cistern? Are you speaking the truth from within? You know, is whatever you're telling the Lord truth from your heart, or is it just lips? And especially now when things have gone online, we have preachers who you just go in the internet and you get your own words. You speak words that you've heard people speak. So when God looks at you, he hears you speaking words that are not yours. So what happens from there? You know, so it's very important for us to come to that place where we need to know that the Lord seeks the heart. What God seeks to see in your life is not much of your ministry. It's much of the posture of your heart. How is your heart? How is your heart? Because you will read that in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 17, where the Bible says that for man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. And so it's very important for us to know that. Then how do you get to know that you have a perfect heart? It's very important for us to finish up from that place where now, how do you know that you have a perfect heart? How do you know that your heart is not what is hindering you from receiving prayers, responses from God? How do you get to a place where now you know that your heart is not your interest, it's not what is sabotaging whatever God has for you? How do you come to that place? I want us to just go through a few things that the Holy Spirit has helped me to understand about a perfect heart. And one of them is that a perfect heart has its conscience alive. You know, a perfect heart has its conscience alive. You are not dead, you know. your conscience is awake. It's a heart that is uncomfortable in wickedness. You're not comfortable in sin. You're not comfortable in hate. You're not comfortable in things that are not right. Every time a perfect heart not says something is not right, it acts. It acts because the conscience is alive. You don't walk like a dead person, you know. You don't walk like someone that is heartless, someone that doesn't feel, doesn't feel it. Your conscience is alive and your heart is not comfortable in displeasing the Lord. Anything that is not pleasing God, whatever it is, no matter who comes with it, you are uncomfortable in that. Number 2, it is a heart that completely trusts in God. A perfect heart trusts in God. It does not trust God halfway. You know the way we always have this place where we are praying for something, but already our mind knows where we want to get that thing from. You get what I'm talking about? A perfect heart trusts completely in God. You get to a place where you know that your certificate can actually give you that job, but your heart trusts in God. You deeply know that even though my certificate qualifies me for that job, I deeply know that my certificates can't give me that job. Only God can do that. It's that trust, complete trust in God. That you know that the way you've kept your life, your character can allow you to get married to that man. But you still know, even with my good character, with my good speech, with my good appearance, with my beautiful face, I still know that it's not my beautiful face that will cause me to get married with that man. It's God. That complete trust in God. And a perfect heart never quarrels with God. We are living in a time where there's no fear for God in us. You quarrel God. You miss out on that appointment. The next person that you're quarreling is God. Why me? Why me, God? Why me, God? Why has it happened to me? You're always quarreling with God. A perfect heart never quarrels with God. It is a heart that is contented with God's goodness and faithfulness. A perfect heart comes to a place where you're comfortable, you're contented with the goodness of God and his faithfulness. And you know everything that God does for you is good and it's perfect. You don't get to a place where you are asking God questions. You are coming to a place where you feel like God is unfaithful, because God can never be unfaithful. God will never be unfaithful. If you see any unfaithfulness in your life between you and God, you are the one who is unfaithful. It will never be God. But imperfect heart will bring you to a place where you begin to quarrel God and always feel that God is not fair. God is not, he should have done this to me. He has not done this to me. So when you begin to ask the Lord to help you to have a perfect heart, then all these things will not happen. It is a heart that does not accuse God. You cannot keep on accusing God for everything and accept anything from him. Sometimes we are the ones who block ourselves from experiencing God. Because in your speech, you're always accusing God. You're always complaining. But then after you feel